If I know I'm sitting right there in the black and white jacket, and there's a space next to me, and there's a guy in a peach shirt next to me, and I know where to find myself in the picture, and I look there, and yet I am missing because, unbeknownst to me, I have been digitally removed from the picture, I'm going to wonder, what is wrong with this picture? I was there, why am I not included? The fact of the matter is, when we enter new environments, whether schools or workplaces or local community organizations, one of the first things we do is look for evidence that people like us, however we have defined ourselves, are part of the picture. Who else in the room looks like me? Who else in the room has the interests that I have? Who else in the room is concerned about the things that I'm concerned about? Where am I placed in the organization? Are people like me serving the coffee and everybody else making the decisions? Where am I in the organization? When and where am I included, and in what ways? When and where do I appear to have been left out? Those of us in leadership roles need to learn how to think inclusively, and this is not our habit. But we have to, and it's not our habit because we've grown up in exclusionary communities for the most part. And so if we've grown up in segregated neighborhoods and segregated schools and have not had the experience of practicing this habit of mind, we don't necessarily think about who is missing from the picture. But that is the first question we have to ask. Who is in the picture? Who's missing from it? What can we do to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to find themselves in the picture? That's the A, affirming identity. Being included in the picture in very tangible and meaningful ways. B is building community. In schools, students also need to sense that they belong to a larger shared school community. Students who feel that their own needs for affirmation have been met, workers who feel that their own needs for affirmation have been met, are more willing and able to engage with others across lines of difference. Sometimes people will say, well, if we focus on affirming identity, isn't that contradictory to building community? For example, some companies address issues of diversity within their organizations by creating affinity groups. Creating affinity groups for people of color, the African American Alliance of, you name the company, or affinity groups for women if they're underrepresented, or affinity groups for people of gay or lesbian people if that's an issue, homophobia is trying to be addressed in the organization, or whoever the marginalized groups are, many organizations will think about creating affinity groups, and this is a common strategy in colleges and universities as well. But some people will say, gosh, if we create these affinity groups, if we create a space for the Latina students to hang out together, or if we create an organization for the Asian students or the African American students, they'll go in those organizations and they'll never come out. Isn't that going to splinter our community? But in reality, those who feel left out of the process do not readily participate in community building activities. Let's imagine this together. Let's imagine that you're going to be in small breakout groups. I know that you are. You're going to be in breakout groups. And let's imagine, I'm going to stick to my photo example. Let's imagine that you come to this conference regularly. It's my understanding that it happens every other year. And you come to this conference every time it's offered. And you go to your breakout group, and at the end of the breakout group, a photo is taken. And the photo is taken so that you can see each other. Who came, who cares about these issues? The idea of taking a group photo is inherently a community building activity. But let's imagine every time you get your picture, you're not in it. Let's imagine, I don't know how many times it's going to take, but let's imagine you take that picture. You're in that group, maybe it's the 4th or 5th time you've come and they're taking a picture and you have had the experience 4 or 5 times of not being in the photo. And you decide, you know what, I want to beat the traffic, I think I'll just excuse myself. No need to hang around for that picture taking unless you are confident you're going to be in the picture. When we do the things that affirm identity, what we are communicating to those marginalized groups is, we want you in the picture. We know these things are important to you. This is the way we are affirming your identity. When we do that, we know you are more willing, more eager, more energy. You have more energy to be involved in the community, the hard work of community building that we need you and everyone else to be doing. It is hard, teachers know this, it's hard for kids to concentrate when they're hungry. All you think about is the fact that you're hungry. You have to meet that need before you can focus on the hard work of cognitive capacity building. In the same way, when we talk about community building, we have to meet the initial need of affirmation in order to mobilize the energy of the community. And that's not true just for minority groups. The white ally who wants to be in an organization focused on unlearning racism wants to know that there are people like me here. Who else like me is here? Am I going to be out here by myself? I need some affirmation in order to really commit to this activity. And that's just a fundamental psychological need that we all have to be aware of and address as we think about community building. But community building is important. And if we do the A, the B gets much easier. The C, cultivating leadership, is this. Leadership in the 21st century requires the ability to interact effectively with others from very different backgrounds. Now, one of the things I've learned about this region is that some parts of it are more diverse than others. Those young people who are growing up in monocultural communities are at a disadvantage for the long term, in that they will not have the opportunity to learn the skills of engaging with people different from themselves. And if you look at the workplace today, or the workplace in 2030 or 2040 or 2050, if you don't know how to do that, you're going to be out of luck. We have to be intentional in developing the ability to connect across lines of difference, and it does take practice. We have to be intentional about creating such opportunities because the persistent social segregation most of us have grown up with limit the opportunities that we have had. I want to offer an example. A few years ago, I was invited to be the speaker. I live in Atlanta now. I grew up in Massachusetts and worked there for many years, but now, as the president of Spelman College, I live in Atlanta. And I was invited to speak at a special assembly in Atlanta at a high school in North Atlanta, celebrating Black History Month. The principal, a white male, took obvious pride in telling me about the diversity of his school population. In a school district in which there's still a lot of school segregation, this particular school was fairly racially mixed, and he had some pride in that. It was a school in which several languages are spoken, and there was no clear racial majority. Cultural celebrations were common, and the Black History Month Assembly was part of a series of events featured throughout the year. Certainly for the students of African descent, this assembly was an affirmation of their presence in the school. The theme of the Black History Month Assembly was The Souls of Black Folk, which was taken from the title of a book written by W.E.B. Du Bois in 1903. And this was in 2003, this event, and it was the 100th anniversary of the publishing of this classic text by W.E.B. Du Bois. And that fact in itself increased the visibility of the intellectual history of the African American community and connected the students to local history as Professor Du Bois published The Souls of Black Folk while teaching at Atlanta University at the beginning of the 20th century.